You'll get that little notification. So anyways, this little one is a little 8x8 board. I meant to order the cradle boards like this, and when that was a great buy. No wonder they're like this thin. But I still like painting on the wood. Sometimes I like the surface that it doesn't have any gives. And I just like on this where I kind of like just left rough edges and just scumbled kind of the paint on. It worked out nice because it was a nice rigid surface. So I'll show you where I started. And I did give you an 8x10 tracer, so it doesn't have to go on a square. If you have, if I'm doing it on a square and you want to do it on like a rectangle, you can just extend the grass. There's always a way to fit it on. It doesn't have to be on a square. Sometimes people aren't crazy about the squares. I do like painting on a square. So this is how it started, just a wood cradled panel. I get them on Amazon and I sand them down a little bit. And what I did for this, it's a color I really like from Deco Art. You can always mix it up as well with some yellow ochre and brown. But I've been using this when I started the pet portraits. Actually, I started using this honey brown for out of the bottle. With the pet portrait, sometimes you have so many different grays and browns. I got a little selection, so I don't have to keep mixing. I kind of just put them out. So this is what I used for this background. And I simply did just put it on with a bigger brush, and I did it a little thin. It's a little see-through. It doesn't have to have solid coverage. And just to, so we can, I'll work on the one that's dried, but I just want to show you. I just watered down some of the paint and I just brushed it on. Simple as that. When we have done the quinacridone pink background, it's the same thing. I put it on a little bit washy. I don't worry about the coverage. It's all pretty much painted over after. And when it's thinned down with water like that, it does dry fairly quickly. So I'm going to prepare another one because I think I'd like this warm brown to paint other things over. So I'm going to prepare this one, put it aside, and then we'll work on the one that's dry. And then I simply just traced my pattern on there. And this is cute. I thought good for St. Patrick's Day, but it's not all shamrocks and whatnot. It could be a nice little painting for any time. A nice little idea or study for a house. And I
You
wanted
know, we
to,
need a little sheep in the yard or something, right?
what's that? Oh,
I said,
what,
you know, we
Karen?
need a little sheep in the yard, right?
Oh yeah, you know what? I paint sheep on all my cottages. So if you go and search, you'll see lots of sheep because we've simply done. And you know what? We can put a little sheep tonight. A girlfriend just sent me on Facebook message a picture of an Irish cottage. She travels to Ireland a lot, and she had a picture. Something came up on Facebook, and it had a little boat in the front yard. She goes, "Oh, this looks like what you guys are painting." Um, so I haven't had a second to kind of really look at it, but there's lots of things because this is so simple. There's lots of things that you could add. I'm gonna put this aside to dry. The only thing I would do now before to painting on this is I'd give it another sand. When you put some paint on, and especially water, it raises the burr in the wood a little bit. I just take a piece of fine sandpaper and I sand it down. That's all. And now I'll just let this piece dry and use that for something else. I could have traced this in with the white transfer paper, but I had the black and I can kind of see it. I know it's not easy to see for you guys, but it is there. And I wanted just to use kind of a palette of similar colors. I liked this. It was actually a Deco Art color. It is Victorian blue. But if you took your phthalo blue and added some white to it and a tiny bit of Payne's gray, you would get this. It's more like a gray blue. Now, you might want a nice bright cherry blue sky in your cottage, so mix up whatever blue you like and just put it down the same way. It does not have to be this tone. For the greens here, I always mix my greens, so you could mix your phthalo green, a little Payne's gray, maybe a little, I have a little bit of yellow ochre in here, but I have these, I love I also love, and there's a few colors of Deco I really like, and that this Hauser green is a nice dark green.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna use that because I
I
kind of just
used
put
that
my
Hauser
colors.
green on the turtles.
Oh yeah. Well, for this one, I kind of knew I wanted a certain palette. Like I didn't want the bright red door. My other cottages look, if you look them up, they have a bright red door. I wanted everything like a little toned down. So I sort of took the colors and kind of made a little palette. And then that's why I'm using these guys a lot tonight. But you can use your Liquitex as well. Even this red is going to be just a pink. I'm going to tone it down with some gray. So if you took your phthalo green and yellow and just toned it down with a little bit of red, you'll get this earthy color too. I laid my color on a little heavier in the middle, and see how I sort of just went off the edge, but I was trying to leave some of that brown showing on the edge just for that like kind of rustic look. So let us just put our background on first. It's pretty quick little painting, you guys. You'll be surprised, but you know what? We will throw, because if some of you haven't seen me paint sheep, they're so simple. Like they're blobs, and then they have heads and ears, and then they turn into sheep. So you can use one of your hog bristle. I want something that's a little rougher here, a hog bristle brush, or I sometimes will be using my, like these are synthetic flats, but if they're kind of been around for a while and they've stiffened up, they are good for that too. So I don't want a soft brush for this. A soft brush would get right into all your grooves and cover really smoothly, and I want it rougher. So I'm going to go right into that Victorian blue. It needs to be lightened a little bit. I may even lighten it with some of the buttermilk instead of white to keep that toned down look, maybe. I don't want to go on with too much paint, but I'm going to go into the center where it's more covered. And as I get to the edges, I'm going to make sure my brush is almost like a dry brush. So I'll just go and outline. Now, remember, you can go in with a smaller brush if you're more comfortable to get your line work done. I know I can cover with the next coat of paint if I'm not spot on with this big brush. So I'm going to go with that. We've got a little horizon line there, so we'll just go down to that. It's pretty dry surface. I usually use the acrylic paint as my primer or sealer on something like this. So when I go on for the next coat, I can certainly highlight and shade, but it's sucking up the paint and drying pretty quick. But for this rough look I want in the back, that's okay. So I'm going to get it heavier right around the cottage here. But you can see I don't have a big brush load of paint. You can almost hear I'm kind of scrubbing that paint in and just getting it when I need to. I just want to get around that cottage down to the horizon line, really. I still want to be careful not, see, I went right over to the edge there, but I do want to keep the edge kind of free. I am doing all these kind of crazy strokes so that I don't have lines. I just am just kind of scumbling that on. And you can have, I had a pretty solid blue sky. I didn't put a whole lot of clouds in like I do sometimes. It kind of made it so that the smoke didn't, you could really see the little smoke from the chimneys. If I had a lot of clouds back there, that wouldn't be as noticeable. This is close to the edge, so I am going to just kind of push that out a little bit and keep that rough edge. How many have painted on wood before? Do you like the texture or the feel of it? Is anybody else?
I've
Painted
done
on
some of 'em.
shelves.
I'm sorry.
It's so hard on
Go
Zoom to
ahead.
be like trying to know
No,
if we're talking
I
next and
used
all that. It's a
old
pain.
shelves,
What's that?
old shelves.
I'm gonna turn my volume up because I'm kind of low here. There, that's better. Did you say shelves, someone?
Yeah,
Yeah,
from our garage, we had some work done and we had to cut the shelves, so I
okay,
used
so
what
you had the
cut
wood
off.
left over?
But that was more of a laminate.
Yeah, I kind of, like I said, I go sometimes when I was doing all my signs right to Home Depot, get like a 8 foot, 12 foot, 6 inch by 12. When they say 6 inch, it's really 5.5. So I measure to be sure, and then I have them cut them in, like for you, you guys will see next month when we do the mixed media, but I might do some on here. And I just have them, they'll cut it for you right there. And I would have them cut it into like 5.5 sections. So I had little 5.5 inch squares, or you could go to the 8 inch or whatever. And you get a whole pile of them to paint. I kind of like to paint on the wood. I have certain things I like to paint on canvas and some things I want to paint on wood. It's fun to kind of mix it up a little bit. I don't know who was on our last call where I forget the name because who was it? I'm terrible, you guys. I'm terrible with names and things. But she's painting her sofa. Did you remember that? Who was here for that on that call?
I was.
She painted her fabric sofa with this.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
nice, it's
Mhm.
beautiful. So really, you can paint on anything, right? You always see me saying that. You can paint on anything. So I am really cutting in short here. I'm gonna go out further, but I wanted to kind of stop the heavy paint and then just use a dry brush to get that edge. You could go more or less, whatever you'd like, but I just stop ahead of time and get the dry brush so that I don't go too far. And I
Carol,
just-
do you seal the wood first?
Oh, I didn't. That's what I was saying. That's why it's taking this so dry. And now that this coat of acrylics on it, that is sort of my sealer. You could very well take a polycryl sealer first, put it over the wood and give it a nice sand. That gives you a little more of a tooth. I sort of wanted a rough look to this painting, so I'm working with the dryness of it, but certainly you can put on a, I use the Minwax polycryl. I use that to put on paintings when I'm done if I want to varnish them. But you can certainly seal your raw wood with that. I would not seal, I would seal it after I did this little wash though. You want that wash to sort of absorb in and be a little washy looking. And if you had the polycryl on there, it might slide around a little more than sink in. So I would put, if you wanted a smoother surface to paint, I would do it after your background underpainting. Personal preference. There's no right or wrong way. People ask about, oh, you seal every painting. I don't. If it's kind of something that's bright, like the fair painting, it was bright. I kind of wanted it to be a little bit of a little sheen to it, or you could even put just a matte or a satin finish. And sometimes I don't. It's all personal preference and how it looks. You know,
I don't even seal those house portraits either.
yeah, if it was a watercolor, you certainly wouldn't, but it gets almost kind of plasticky and shiny and almost sometimes print looking like a print.
Yeah.
So I would just practice and I mean just experiment and see what you like. So I've left a little bit of that. You can see that wood showing. I left this sky pretty much that way. If you wanted to, if you took a tiny bit of like, I don't know, white would be too bright, but a little bit of the buttermilk, and if you wanted a little vague bits of a cloud, you could do that. Very light. I don't want this, like I said, I want this to be sort of simple, but if you want to, because I love it when you make your paintings your own. I'm showing you what I do and how I do it. I don't expect you to do it exactly that way. I want you to kind of play around with it. So that's how I did my sky. And I just added a little of that buttermilk to show you if you wanted to add a little bit something for clouds. I'm going to rinse my brush off now, and I'm just going to go into the dark green and do the same thing. In the dark green is pretty much, like I said, the same way. I left some of the brown showing. I did go afterwards very lightly scumble some yellow ochre color or the honey brown, but I think I used yellow ochre, so we'll try that. And same thing, I'm just going to outline around things and without the sealer, Cindy, on this, I like the way it's sort of just very dry and absorbing right into the wood. It's all, like I said, personal preference. You could try it either way. The paint would have a better tooth, but it might slide around. And I want it to kind of almost be rough like that. And I don't want to say primitive, but you know, that kind of a look. I've sort of lost my path here, which doesn't really matter, but you could be careful if you wanted to around that.
Well, I did decorative painting for about 100 years.
Oh, see, yeah, I think we have that in common. I think we talked about that. I used to teach decorative painting in the 80s, right? Is that when
Yeah.
and it was all oil paint though. And that I think, you know, people shy away, I guess, from oil paint now, thinking it's so difficult. But back in the day, wasn't that like the easiest? Because, you know, you would do your like Priscilla Hauser fruit, right? You're doing your apple, you put a dot, a round circle of white, and you go around it with yellow. I still remember it. Then you get the red, and then you get like the orangey on one side and the dark. And then you have time to blend it. So if we did that now, we would have a big circle of white and it wouldn't go anywhere. So when we learned those techniques back in the day, all that blending, it was kind of nice.
And it was a lot of prep of your surfaces too.
Remember that, and it still kind of is because I still follow a lot of it, and I still, you know, do some. I'm actually okay. So actually tomorrow I'm going to go up, and I sometimes go up because Donna Dewberry lives like 50 minutes away from me. You know, Donna Dewberry from One Stroke back in the days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
she lives nearby, and so I'm going up to a class tomorrow. And just because I just like to be on the other side of it sometimes and just be the student. And so it's kind of funny going back into that world. She's got a beautiful shop with all the stuff, all the wood pieces and everything. We work in acrylics, but I
I,
love that. I almost wanted to kind of bring that teaching style back a little, because if people are shy about oils, it really is a nice way to teach people to do some beautiful fruits and vegetables and flowers in that method that we all learned. And I know they're all doing it now, but in acrylics, but in the oils, we'd have the little sets, and the little oil tubes were only this big. But if you put down a little oil, you have all that time with, your nice flat brushes to sort of blend it. Um, I
well,
really
when
enjoy.
I first started, we had painting lessons on the top floor of the funeral home.
Get out.
Yeah. And
I had a
so,
shop.
if-
I had a shop in Northborough, actually. I started teaching. My mother had a ceramic studio when I grew up, so I was teaching like at that in her place for a while, and then I opened a gift shop in Northborough and taught decorative painting and going to all the conventions and learning all the teachers. They still have there's not much left for like the conventions, but Cindy, they have one of the biggest ones left now is right in Marlborough.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
and I used to belong to the painting guild in Rhode Island because I lived right kind of like equally as far from either place.
Okay, yep.
So I'd go to Rhode Island, but we'd always go to that the convention that they had.
Yeah, I used to go to the one in Ohio was big back in the day, and it was fun.
And Lynn Andrews, I don't know if you've ever seen her works.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, she does some beautiful painting, and and that's how she got started, was at one of those
Oh,
conventions.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think Donna Dewberry still goes to whatever ones they have as well. So I've just put the same green in all around here. I'm going to take a little bit of the lighter shade, which if you just took a tiny bit of buttermilk to this same color, here you go, it's this. I just want to just kind of scumble it in. And when I say scumble, it's kind of like almost dry paint, and I just kind of mush it around, and that's why you want a brush that is not a fine brush that you care about, because you're just kind of really beating on that brush. I think I did a little bit of yellow ochre, but I'm going to let it dry because you don't really see it. So let's just let that dry, and then we'll dry it, brush scumble on a little of that yellow ochre. So now it's just laying on all the colors, and then I'm kind of using some rough brush strokes to put some highlights and shadows. Even on my whimsical cottages, a lot of the cottages, you can see I've painted it a blue-gray completely to begin with, and then just put some of the lighter shades on top, the white. So let's get that kind of based in. So I'm going to kind of base in these colors first. It doesn't really matter what brush we do that with. So I'm going to rinse off this one. And I usually, of course, base coat with a darker color, and then I can work my way up to the highlights. And so this roof is going to be maybe the yellow ochre, and then we're going to use some of the buttermilk and the lighter shades. But let me start with the cottage because I can do the little chimneys. I'm just going to use a little flat brush for that. Whatever you're comfortable with, use for that. And to make that gray, I'm going to use white, tiny bit of Payne's gray. If you're using just white and a little black, just add a little blue into it. I just want a little bit of a blue toned gray. So, and then I'll adjust it as I get it on the wood to see what I like. This side is darker because this is going to be a little more shadow. So maybe I'll get a little more of the Payne's gray. I can do
Cheryl, am I the only person that sounds like you're whispering?
Oh, I don't know. You guys hear me okay?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I must be, I mean, I know I'm hard of hearing, but
But I know we had trouble last time, but I have it like kind of right on top of me here. And I did say I'm gonna have to practice with, I think I left my mic up in Maine, but I'll try to keep, I might fade away too as I'm talking. I might kind of, I'll try to speak a little louder. But do let me know, because I'd rather have you let me know and hear what I'm saying. So just a little bit darker gray. Around the bushes, you don't have to be super careful because you're going to just make those little shrubs there pretty rough. And then the front, I'm going to do a little bit lighter gray. I'll put a dark shadow across underneath the rooftop. Just, it's really just base coating stuff now. Kind of the grunt work. I know these little windows are gonna be dark, so I'm not worrying about them perfectly being painted in. It is harder to get a really fine line on this rough wood, but I kept it like that because I really like the rough look of the painting. Can't believe how early Easter is now. We'll have that right in March.
When is Easter?
It's the end of March, so
The
it's
31st.
yeah.
Oh, really?
I still have my Valentine's decorations up. I've got to get on the ball. I have a few little St. Patrick's Day things to put out, and then we're into Easter.
The
Not-
the teapot that you did was adorable.
Oh, thank you. I have
Yeah.
it right here because I need to varnish it. On my tin pieces, I do varnish them with the polycryl, and I'm out, so I have it like right here. But it's I should put something with it because look at it's teeny. It's not like big, and I know it's hard to with the scale of it. But I do that little cottage kind of the same way. Well, I think I did that with the white and then just did a blue shadow. But I love painting all those little patches, those green patches. But see how different, like, so it's just fun to paint some different styles. This is a very subdued palette. This is brighter, more whimsical. That was really
It'd be
fun.
cool if you could find some little metal cups that were
Oh,
uh
right.
size wise right,
I
to
do
go
have
with the
some
little teapot.
that I think are a little big. I got these adorable little, they look like little mule, the little popper mule
Uh-huh.
cups, but they're different colors and they're teeny, so they're like for shots. I just got them because they were so adorable, but I think they still be big for that. But that would be cute. But I'd
You could
lose
find a
interest.
little
See,
kid's tea set,
that is true. I'll have to keep an eye out. But I
but it'd
lose
be
interest. Like once I
cute to
do
have
that,
those with it.
yeah, it's kind of like okay, I've done it. I don't want to go back and do another. So, but I do. And I just kind of lose the interest in that. Okay, so that I know is going to be dark under the roof line. So I think I might just go right now. I'm gonna make it like a kind of a little, it's that thatched roof, so I'm not making it a perfect line. I'm kind of gonna do this. And I don't want to leave it as a line just like that, but while it's wet, I'll just take the dry brush and just soften it a little bit.
What color did you use?
Payne's gray.
Okay.
I love the Payne's gray because it's got a blue tint to it. I do throw out a lot of times black as well a little bit because sometimes we need it has to be the black if it's the eyes or some things I just need a little deeper. But for this, it's just Payne's gray. I put it on there and really, even though this is a better brush and I'm not going to really scumble with it, I can use the dry brush just to soften that. And I can go back if I have to and even get it darker. Like if I needed to get a little darker, maybe the black with the Payne's gray. I had a nice dark shadow underneath this roof line here, which I can come back. I probably would come back after and put it in. Just in those little nooks and crannies there. While I'm doing darks though, and I have this perfect little square brush to do windows, I'm going to do the windows. And let's see, we have some little flowers in the window box, but I can do that on top. I'm gonna go right down to the window box pretty much. I love this little brush for this exact thing, windows. It's what did I say, a Lang nickel. It's a clear base. It's a clear, oh, I've got a newer one, different size, but it looks like this at Michael's and they really aren't, I don't know if they're only like $5 or something, they're not much. But I just love that this tip is so long and to do windows and doors and things. I use this brush for an awful lot all of a sudden. So I will go in and just dab in some blue to make it look like it's not a black hole, but I don't want to do that till it's dry. So there's that. And since we're going to wait for that to dry anyway, let's just put, oh, and the gray actually on the little chimneys. There's only a little bit showing, but it's a little brighter in the front. So it's a little lighter gray. And then those two little side bits are going to be a little bit in shadow. So I will just go and do those a little darker. It's hard, because the gray I put on this and the sky is the exact same value, look at how it just blends right in, you can hardly see it. But when I lighten it up, it'll pop out a little bit. And then the roof, the thatch. Probably gonna just take some of the honey brown and maybe some of the gold and get that front end. Again, look, it's almost the same color as the background, but I still have to paint it, so we'll just use that honey brown. I'm just going to eat that and the yellow ochre. Edges in shadow, so I might just take the yellow ochre and maybe some burnt sienna. I just want that a little darker on that side. Same colors I really, when I do like the whimsical cottages or the other styles, I still base my roof a lot of times in the yellow ochre and then make the straw on top with the buttermilk and the yellow ochre, get a few shades lighter. I liked the look of just this rough little edge. So I'm going to take a smaller brush just to paint that in because I really like the way that came out. So for now, I'll just get it rough with this. And then I'm going to take that little square brush and just make it more indent and a little bit. But at least I got my base coat on there now. And I just like the way it just sort of, I could just almost use the brush flat and the chisel edge and just, because that real dark is under there, it really shows up nice, the little, like say it's like the little bits of thatch that are coming down. And it's just, I don't know why, I just like the way it looked. All right. Sometimes nice to do all this work of getting the things base coated and then you can come back and have fun. So for the path, it was just a dark brown. So I'll probably just take, I have burnt umber here. Actually, it's a really dark burnt umber. It might be okay by itself. Whenever I do a path, you never want it to come straight at you, even if it looks that way. It looks so much nicer if you kind of just zigzag, and it can get a little wider as you go. Starts out a little thinner, but it can get a little wider. But I do like the look of it, sort of a zigzag. Same with water or a stream. It's right in front of you. Looks like it comes at you just like this, but just meander it, even if it's not that way. I just would make it be a little more interesting. That's even a little different than the path I have in my original, but that's a little path there.
Hey,
And the doorways and the window boxes, I just have like a salmon-y color almost. So I've just got my Tuscan red. Maybe I'll take
Does
a
she
little.
see us?
yeah.
Oh, hey,
Tell her
Willow.
hello.
Honey,
Hey,
how are you today?
good. I just went at dance class.
Oh, how was it? Did you have fun?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
A little bit of the red and a little bit of Payne's gray, and see how it really tones that down. It's just a
I'm gonna go.
nicer shade. Sometimes if I decide like a toned down painting, I will just mix all the colors to dull them. The green, usually a little red will dull it. This Payne's gray I can use to dull a lot of things. And I know I'm going to put a shadow around the edge here after, but for now I just want to cover. It would have been canvas if it was canvas, but just to get a layer of paint down there. And you can pick any color. The little cottages in Ireland, the doors are all kind of fun colors. I may, when I'm texturing the stucco there, I might hit a little bit of the doorway and the window box, but I can touch it up. It probably wouldn't have been a bad idea just to do the lighter color already, but I was in my mode of getting some things covered. Okay. And why don't I do that? It's dry now. We can put the stucco on. And then anything that is the greenery is very dark, almost black green to start with. And then we're just going to dab on. And then I put a few little dots here and there, not too much, just a little bit, just to add a little something. But now I want to go back to a rougher brush. So any brush that's a little stiffer or scraggly to do the texture of that stucco. And I don't mind doing a couple of coats because I want it a little thin to start. So I'm going to see how that looks. I might even water it down, but let's just see. I've got a little of that white on my brush. I don't want a lot at all. So even to start, just take some off. And if it's so faint you can't see it, we can add more. But I'd rather than get on there with a big brush load of paint, I'd rather have it super light. And I don't know if you can hear it, but you can almost hear the roughness of the brush on there when I'm scumbling that. So I'm just going to do a light coat. I'm not going to go too far up. I'm still going to put a little shadow up here, though, that's going to be under the roof. And I want to mix up my little strokes. This brush is almost a little too big for this. But I'm going to do what I can with it, and then I can go back with a smaller brush. I'm going to do the same thing over here, but I just do want that to stay a little darker. Didn't mean for that little bit to come out. But because we have that base underneath it darker, it's gonna appear darker. I think I needed a little bit more of a blue-gray too. So let me go into this blue so that this side is a little more blue-gray. Maybe even a little Payne's gray. I just want this to be a little bit darker on that side. And if it was just black, it would look very dull. It's so nice to use the Payne's gray and even this little bit of blue rather than just black and white. And then I just build it up a little heavier. I'm going to go to the little square brush now and make sure it's dry. Get a little of that white. And I tried to get my brightest in the middle, like I'll go a little bit down this edge here because I want that to stand out from the side where it's shaded. But I want to really scumble that out so I don't have that line. So I'm quickly going over there and pulling that out. I'm going to just use the white on my brush, a little heavier than what we did with the scumbling. And I'm going to just make these strokes, not all one way, across or up and down. I'm just gonna, those little crisscross hatchy strokes, painterly strokes, really. And I'm just gonna build up. I think that when the recording comes out, the quality is way better than what I'm seeing now because it always looks a little off to me, but then when I watch the recording, it's okay. So hopefully it's all right on your end. And then just build it up as bright as you like. I sometimes shy away from the edges of things because it would almost be a little shadow cast anyway. So I'm not going to butt right up against the window. I'm just going to go like a little bit, leave a little shadow around the door frame. I'll go afterwards with a little thin line and give that a little bit of an outline. And step by step, you know, just build it up. You could stop now, or you could say, I want it a little brighter in just a handful of places. And I really like it kind of bluish over here. So I'm going to get a little lighter, but more on the blue. I really like the strong contrast of the dark side there. All right, so now I'm going to, I actually didn't have to really rinse my brush off. I want to put a little blue in those windows before I put the little cross hatches. So I could have actually just used the brush before I rinsed it out. So I'm taking just the straight Victorian blue, so just a straight darker blue. Just hit it in a few places, just quickly like that. Don't even think about where it's going. And then I'm going to do a little of that blue with some white, but I'm just going to get a little of that blue in there. Going to mix it with some white, very dry brush still. And just really, just a few little strokes. That's almost a little bright, but there, that's good. Hardly anything. And this is a good technique, Gail, when you're doing some of your house portraits. I usually do a dark window and then just some blue kind of highlights.
Yeah, that's what I've done is put
all
like
you
a
need to
Payne's
do.
gray type with a little blue in it. And
Yep.
I told him I wanted more pictures in the sunshine.
Oh, I know. Sometimes I have to like add, like it's the wrong season and it's like winter. And
Right.
I would put green grass and flowers and add things in, changing up. Sometimes I don't have a lot of photos if it's a house that is, say someone's doing
He
their
takes his
home.
pictures using one of those things that go in the sky.
Oh, a drone.
Drone.
The
Oh,
drone, yeah,
it's nice to have one that you're standing on the ground and looking straight on, so that's tough
Yeah.
sometimes, probably. I'm gonna water down a little bit of white, just thin it a bit, and I'm not even outlining the whole door. I'm just going across the right top and the right side with a strong white. I don't know why I did that, but I did, and I did it for some reason just on the left side of these guys. Because the wood's dry, though, it does absorb that paint, so that's why I'm adding a little water. And then just a little crisscross. Really, I just have whatever's left on my brush. And that is that. Sometimes I would go and put like a watered down white wash of like a lace curtain in the window. I was keeping this super simple, but you could. I think I took the tiniest little dab of yellow ochre that you could barely see, and just a little dab in here like it was a candle lit or something. So I just did a little dab of that. I did skip when I was doing the sides in the front, I should have done my little chimneys. I did not. So let's go with some of the white, really dry brush. And it's simply just a few little strokes on the front. Get some blue for the side. That's it. That's as simple as that for those guys. And let's put the smoke on, because that's kind of the most fun. Well, the little dabs of flowers, but the smoke is fun. I do it really light. And you can go back and do it a second time if you want, but you don't want it as bright white as the stucco. You want it to be like just a little wisp. So I'm going to really water down some white. I'm really going to thin it down a lot. If it's too thin and just a wash and you can't see it, then so be it. Let it dry and you can do another couple coats. But I'd rather have you again start really light. And it looks like I went and did them off to this edge. So I start down here, flat brush, kind of place it down, and then I'm just wiggling it and kind of bringing it away. It's almost even too bright there, but that one I like better. So I'm just going to take the brush and just wipe away some of that. I just don't want it even that bright. I'm just using a little water on my brush to soften it. See how much lighter that is, which I kind of like, but this one's closer to us, so it might be a little brighter. It's good enough. And we will work on our roof now. And many times when I've done these little cottages, I've done like this, all those little line works, all the little straw bits with a fine brush. But I wanted to get away. I wanted this to be simpler, so I really just did some bigger brush strokes. It's going to be kind of like on the Easter Bunny painting. It's going to be not getting all picky. It's going to appear when we're away from it, your lights and darks, but I did them pretty heavy. So I want to just work to a light with a few steps. So I've got this yellow ochre color on here. I'm going to just take some and mix it with buttermilk. I think I like it with the buttermilk, staying with these warm tones rather than mixing it with white. I want it to be just a little bit lighter, not too much. And I'm really going to, let me thin it down because I want it to be a little softer, more of a wash than that. So I am going to just kind of put a wash with that rough brush. So the texture I'm getting is pretty cool. Even though it's watery, you get that rough texture from that brush. It's watery paint, but it's not a lot on there. I can do a little bit towards the front here, but I'm going to do it like a darker wash on that one. All right. And then I'm going to get a little lighter each time. But let me get the darker wash over here. I'm going to get that light off my brush. I'm going to just go into my dark brown. It's a dark burnt umber. But again, I want that as thinned out. So I'm adding some water. And every time I do this and I down, I say, don't worry about it being too light. I'd rather have it too light and have you build it up. So I know I go real light to start just to see. And if it doesn't show up, that's pretty light. Then I can take a tiny bit of pigment maybe and so I'm going kind of at an angle here with this dark angle, but then I'm going to get a little straighter, following the shape of that roof. I might do a little bit down the bottom here towards the, I don't know, doesn't need much. And I'm going to rinse my brush because I do want to get lighter now. It's drying very quick because it's so thinned down. So this color that we did this little highlight with, I might get just even a little more buttermilk in there. And as I get lighter, I'm going to do less. So I might just do a few little like that. And I might take a little white, but not too much after. I want to get a little bit, that's too light. I want to get it more gold on this side. I don't want it to be as light as this. And I do love the way this brush, when it's dry like that, you can almost get the little straw look. So less is more. Let's just leave that right now. It looks like I took some of the honey brown, or maybe a honey brown and burnt umber after, and did these little, I did the little streak coming down into the dark, but then I did some coming up. So I think I want to go back and get that a little darker under there. Now I know it looks dark here, but I want just a little bit, I just want to bring it down a little. I'm going to just use my little flat brush again. I'm going to get like a blue gray. So that blue with a little Payne's gray will give us a blue gray. And I always have to make the color and try it. I never know exactly if it's going to work. I just want to get a little lower shadow here, a little deeper. And I want it to be not always super covered like that. So I've just wet my brush a little bit. And I'm just coming down a little farther than we had it. I'm just using these little strokes, so it's kind of a little rough edges. It's not a perfect line across. I will do a little more of that perfect line up under the eaves there, but I just wanted this to, maybe I'll come down the side of the door a little bit. And sometimes it's a layering thing. This looks too harsh. I'm going to scumble maybe a little white into it after. We'll see. I do want to go back in and get that real dark. I really like the way that real dark came out under there. So that means I need to add a little black, not just the Payne's gray. I just need it a little bit darker. And I'm going to almost paint it in with the little brush so that I can go and make these little cuts so that it looks like the little bits of the roof again. I'm going up a little higher. Last time we did it, but we did the gold coming down onto it. I'm going to go along. I'm going to keep wetting down this paint because I want it to flow nice. I don't want it to be jaggedy. I liked the jagged look for those highlights, but here I wanted to get a really nice line. I'm going up a little higher along the bottom of that roof, and then just bringing those little bits up into it. So it looks kind of raggedy, and you know how those roofs would be. I got to remember to kind of angle back a little bit more. Not that it's a big deal, but it would be more of an angle there. Gail, has that perspective book helped at all and made any sense? How is that?
It's I hadn't really started into it. I just got like the first 3 pages.
I was looking at it myself and I had to do a few pages, let it sink in, kind of go back to it. It was a little, you know.
Yeah, what I want is I want somebody to read it and let me read it and then say, Gail, it means this, and then draw
Yeah.
an example of it.
That is
Because we're I think that's how come people like Bob Ross, because we are very visual
Visual.
learners.
yes, I am for sure. I want to soften that a little bit. I'm just taking a little bit of white paint on a dry brush here just to kind of soften that bit.
Because we're so intently quiet while you're doing this, that we're absolutely taking every bit into it,
I know. And remember though, you do have to get back from it too and look, because that helps all of us. And as this dries, it kind of doesn't look as much of a highlight as we started with. So that's why I build it up. I'm going to go now into straight white. I don't want to do too much. I've got water on my brush. I'm getting a dry brush. And I just want a couple of places, because if we did it everywhere, it's not special anymore and doesn't really pop. But if we just do it a couple of places and just stop, just make ourselves stop. I'm going to go with my buttermilk a little bit, just for a few highlights towards the front of the side of that roof. That's a little bit too white. I want a little bit of gold in there, but I want it to show up a little bit. And then you can add in if you think you need anything, but yeah, that's enough. I'm so tempted to always go and do the extra little bit. The little shadow, it would look nice. Take any color you have here. I used the Payne's gray. It's just a little shadow here on the right side under the top and down the right side of the door. A little doorknob. And also I did give a little shadow. I know it's hard to see because we're gonna have the plants draping over those window boxes, but the sides are the darker. The side of the window box is a little darker. I'm just taking a little watered down Payne's gray and just, it will hardly be seen, but I just want a little shadow on the side of the window box. That one's a little bit really dark, but it's okay. And then you can always, I use the big brush, so if I needed to kind of just straighten that a little bit, I don't think anybody would have noticed, but I can always touch those up. The areas where we have any kind of foliage, we'll just paint in now real quick as a dark, dark green. Like I said, it's almost a black green. So even this Hauser green dark needs to have a little bit of Payne's gray into it or black, just to make it a little darker. And I just like the little shrubs on the side. So this is behind the building there. So we've got a straight edge right there. And then it kind of just comes out. Like again, when we put our real light highlight on the right side of that, it will pop with that from that background. But I really want to start it pretty dark. So there's a little shrub on the side there. Comes across the front a little bit. It always just helps too to make the house, if it wasn't perfectly square, I just throw these little bits of greenery in places. A lot of my cottages I used to paint, I would bring it right up on the side of the door there. Sometimes I'd put little planters on the side, but this is just going to hide that little place where the house meets the ground. This I'll go back in with some dark brown, that little area. And then over here, I just for some interest, because if it was just the plain side of the house, that wouldn't be very interesting to look at. So we just get that dark shape in. And I even did it a little bit down the side of the path here and there. I didn't outline it completely, but I just went and it's hard to see now because everything is so dark there, but still just put it in there to start with. And here, same thing. I'll just put it here and there. And I want to get, I actually must have shaded at the bottom of this door. So let me just take a little of this Payne's gray. I just want to cover my wood showing through there. So I'm just going to get that shadow back in there. Right now we'll scumble. We have this green. We want to scumble us a little bit of the yellow ochre in there. Barely noticeable. Dry brush. A little bit of that yellow ochre. Take most of it off. And I just kind of here and there let the texture show through the wood because it kind of is cool. This is even a little bright for my, I might have even used the honey brown. Let's see. Yeah, the honey brown would not be as bright. But again, you can even use a little bit lighter shade of the green like we started to put in. I kind of like the texture of the dryness. Goes with the roughness of the painting. All right, let's go into the middle of the path and lighten that up because it's just a black hole here. I'm just going to take that brown, the honey brown, a little lighter. I love this shade. I've been using it, like I said, a lot lately. And I'm going to just, almost like a zigzag here. Thin it down a little bit. It was a little sticky. That looks very bright there. Let me let that dry because it's not that bright on my piece. I might just tone it down with a little burnt umber. This path is all different from my one original, but it's hard to have it always the same. Oh, so I did want to go across. I think I used the honey brown. Then everything is being thinned on this painting. Pretty much. And I just wanted to go along. I'm going to mix some burnt sienna with it. I couldn't really see it. And I don't know why. I've got a lot of Payne's gray in my brush still. So let me get a little burnt sienna. A little of that brown. And just across the bottom here of this roof. And if I hit the little shadow that I put in there, that's okay, because it kind of obscures it a little bit. I just wanted to get a little bit of that. Again, it's like a little zigzag painting almost. Just across the bottom there, just kind of gave it a little bit of a shadow. Bless you.
Thank you.
Could have done that with actually, I think I might have even done it with my round liner brush. If it's easier, you could just kind of go along like this with that. My door seems to have kind of faded. I need to just dry brush a little of the lighter pink color on there. So I go back and make the same color, a little Payne's gray and a little red, so it's toned down. But now we'll take a little white in there. And I'm not going to completely paint it, but I'm just going to just run that over, dry brush onto my door. See how that just makes it pop a little more. And I'm going to do the same thing on the front of the window. Just a little brush stroke right across there is fine. Oh, and you know what? We do have some greenery on those window boxes, so I'll go back to that dark green and just kind of make a little squiggle. Just a little squiggle there, and it's going to be a little greenery. I think a little heavier white on this side edge. And that's all things that if you want to step back and look at. You know what, now my smoke has really, this one is almost like it's dried so light, you don't even see it anymore. So I think I need to just really lightly just put a little bit in there again. It does dry lighter there. Now, just little strokes. I'm going to use this brush. You could use a little rough brush or this little brush. And I want to get the greens on the dark areas to pop. So here, I want to do it mostly on this right side. But I'm going to do a couple shades. I'm going to go a little lighter, and then I'm going to go a little lighter than that. So I even had this little limey green. It was just a citron green. Your primary yellow with some phthalo green would get that color, maybe with a little white even. So I'm going to take this Hauser green medium, but if you take your dark green, just add a little white to it. And I'm just going to dab that on the right-hand side, back towards the middle, but I'm going to leave it very dark along the house edge there. And I'm just going to dab it wherever I made that green. So just use almost the side of the brush, just kind of dab it. And it doesn't show up a lot, but it shows up a little more. And that's why I want to build up to the little bit of a lime green. This one, heavier green on the right side, but I do go back onto this a little bit here and there. Actually, bigger strokes. I was just really trying to use big strokes. And again, if you made a green from your phthalo green and yellow, and it's that bright emeraldy green, tiny touch of red to it will give you this avocado-y, earthy green. Even dab a little bit into the window boxes here now. And I'm going to just get it a little brighter even. I might go into this citron, but also if you just added your yellow, very edge is going to be the lightest. And see how that starts to pop out. It really looks like white on my video screen, but it's just more of that little yellow. And I put it everywhere. Put a little bit wherever you're going to have some greenery. If you need a smaller brush, that's fine. I'm just using kind of the corner of this brush here and there. And you can get it as bright as you like too. I'm getting a little subdued here, but you can, I think that's pretty bright, but you can add a little more yellow and white and really have it pop if you want. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow ochre here too. We still have just a little bit, so I have this little bit of greenery outlining the path a little bit, but I didn't do it as a complete little ribbon all the way along. I just put it in here and there, just to make it, you know, a little bit more unexpected. And I want to get a little bit of just yellow ochre in there too. Just here and there, you know, just dab that. And then a few little dots of a brighter color that are like the little flowers. which I did in yellows. You could do them in pinks. I'm gonna use this my little brush, but you could use your stylus or your toothpick. And I know many times I do lots of these dots, but I'm gonna try to hold back and just do a few. You know how I like to go a little bit crazy with them. I think I had more of a yellow. I'm gonna just get a little tiny tad. I want it to be a little brighter than our yellow ochre. I'm just gonna get a teeny bit of yellow there, which again, so transparent. If we don't mix white with it, we'll never see it. Mix a little white. And I'm just gonna dab it here and there. Less is more. And some of the bushes, I just here and there. Like some could be a little whiter. And if you just pull up any of those other cottages for reference, you might want to add something that you see in those to this one. I was, like I said, keeping it super simple, but that's, you know, you may not have painted them like I painted the others, and you might want to paint them that way. So that basically is what I did. We're going to add sheep to that. And like I said, on my others, I always go and I add a lot of the line work. You could play around if you want to and see what it's like. I just use a liner brush, and sometimes I just put a few little lines. That's up to you. I didn't on my original here, but it is kind of fun technique. If anything has faded and you've lost it, you can just, now's a good time just to brighten it up. I liked to have this little outline here a little bright, and it seems to have faded a bit. Sometimes it helps to just set it aside and look at it another day, like I'm doing with my other one over there. A little thick, I don't really like that. So that's basically what I've done with my little cottage there. But let's add a sheep on if you would like to see how easy sheep are, because it kind of needs a little sheep. So whether it's this big or it's these little tiny ones, they're all kind of done the same. They're like little ovals for bodies or circles. And that just means the circle ones are kind of facing you, and then the oval ones are kind of sideways to you. I start just like I did on the stucco bit. I start with kind of a gray. I'll just use the Payne's gray maybe and a little white. And it's just a proportion. Like you can't have them as teeny as that little coffee pot on here, and you can't have them giant. So I kind of just put something on there to see what that's probably about the right size. So I do some ovals, I do some circles, and then they sort of morph into sheep shapes. I think I'll just do them right in the front here, and maybe keep it simple, so I'll just do 3. So I've got my little bodies on there. And then I'm going to let it dry, and we're going to just make some white, their fleece. But all I do for features is give them, I'm going to use black for this, not Payne's gray, because I want it to show, and I can throw on a light blue highlight if we need to, which we might, to make it stand out, because it's a pretty dark background. If you've got a light green and you put these little faces on, they'll show up, but they mightn't here. So I'm just gonna, so for their little faces, it's just little, it's like a little oval, and I give them 2 little ears. So if they're, usually I would put the white on first. So I'm gonna put the white on, because then I'll put the little face on top. But for legs, you can, you know, just put little, they're just little stick legs. I sometimes make them lying down by just putting 2 lines this way, but these guys we're gonna have standing. But let me get the white on there before I put the faces on, because it will be easier. If I had a teeny tiny rough brush, I don't know if I do like that, but just your white, a little, almost just like, just make little, you can just dab it almost on this size, but if you want to kind of just make curls or curvy strokes with it, you can. You can start a little watered down and then get heavier like we did. You know, it dries real light, so. we need to put a little bit of white, you know how sometimes they have that on their head there. And so I do it in a few coats. And then I go a little brighter. I don't do it everywhere. I could just maybe do it on the outside edge. I don't want to do it everywhere. Actually, this guy's turning into a sideways one. Anyway, okay. So now I can put their little faces on. So again, just black. And let's say this guy's facing us. It's almost like a teardrop sometimes for their face. And then just two little press and pull, press and pull. And then it just gives them a couple of ears. And let's have this guy looking this way. And almost when you make all these blobs, they almost sort of dictate, like you look at him and you're like, I know that this guy's facing this way, and I don't do much to them, but that I'm going to highlight a little light blue on their faces though, because that background is so dark. Just that blue there with a little white. And his head's kind of big there, but if I just give a little outline, a little highlight to it, maybe his ear and his face, maybe on the legs too, just to. And now to make them sit, we can't have them just floating up in midair. They need a little shadow. I just put a little shadow under them. Our grass is so dark, we need to get that dark green again. So the dark green, a little black or Payne's gray, wash underneath them just to give them a little shadow to stand in. And so if you wanted to add sheep, his head is bugging me. It's too big for his body. He needs to have a little bit of a reduction there. Let's just make his head a little smaller. There, that might work when that dries. Anyway, that's all I would do. But if you want, and Charlotte, you could add chickens and you could add all kinds of little other things as well. But
Yeah, if you did it with a rectangular canvas, you'd have more room for stuff like that, you
you
know.
could put a stone wall. And like I said, look at the other cottage paintings, because I've done a bunch in the membership, and I know I even have some maybe that were done prior to the membership that might be on YouTube. So some I have made like a field of red poppies, really big poppies in the front.
Hmm.
Some I've done all the patchwork on the back for the mountains. But I wanted to do a simple one because I know we've done some detailed things, so I sometimes want to get a little simpler. I did put a varnish on this one. I like the way it shined it up a little bit. But it's all what you like to look at. You might like this little finish here. This would be cute too. You can make it a welcome sign. You could write something or put someone's name on it. You know how
Well,
it's
you
all.
know, the majority of the paintings that I sold at the art fair I went to, I had varnished, and
Yep.
they just it seemed like they liked that, you know.
They brightened them up. And I meant to
Yeah.
say, tell everyone congratulations, because Charlotte that was like your first little art fair, right?
Uh-huh.
And now you're invited back to do some more. So that's so exciting.
Yeah,
Wow.
I've been invited to join an art group in Wetumpka, and they're doing this they do a twice a year event where they have a citywide art fair, and it's like 50 or 60 artists, and in a little, you do sidewalks and stuff like that, you know. It's cool. I hadn't done one before, so I'm of those, you know, and so I'm learning.
It's exciting though.
But
I'm so happy for you. Because
yeah,
and after a while you want something to do with your paint. I mean, what are you going to do with them all, right? So this is perfect. Now you can, paint what you like and then sell extras and
yeah,
just
that's the
and
plan.
buy more canvas and then paint more things and
Yeah, that's the reason I painted the little turtle paintings went right off pretty much, you know. Uh,
I
both of
sold
those
a
were
good bit
sold the
of my
first few
turtles
days.
at the art walk. People love turtles. I wish I had my camera actually today, my phone with me, because I walk around the little pond out front and there's a little pipe that sticks in the water, and sometimes there's a turtle on it or two. There was 9 turtles on it today and a white heron on the little
Oh
pipe.
Lord.
I wish I had had my phone with me, of course, but oh well.
I bet that was cute.
It was just to see so many little heads all sticking up, it was cool. Pam, have you
Okay.
been painting along?
I'm sorry.
Oh, let's see. Okay, hang on, hang on, hang on. Oh, cute.
Oh,
So
how
you got a
cute.
cloud in your sky. Nice.
I did.
I love it.
Let's look it up.
Really, really nice job on that roof too. I love it.
Thank you.
It looks great.
Now, Cheryl, I have a problem with your painting.
Okay.
On the left corner, which will be the side of the house,
Yeah.
distance away, it appears to be the same color as the sky. So
Oh, you're
therefore,
right. Right here.
right, right there be
Yep,
darker.
that's a good catch, because you know what? Look at how much lighter this one is.
Yes.
So we need to lighten that
Up
up.
close, I could see it fine, but from a
Yeah, but
distance,
no, you're right, because the value is so close. I did such close values in this painting. So and I really toned down that side a number of times, but just on that edge, I think it just needs a little bit. So
Oh,
even
that's a lot
lightening it
better.
this much, it's not. I was afraid to lighten it and have it the same as the front, but even with that white on there, it still appears darker. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good catch.
but at
That's-
least it
look at
separates it from the
100% better.
sky. Yeah.
It just looks so much better. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good job.
That's why I have you guys around.
I can use something's wrong, but I can't ever figure out how to fix it.
Because it's on our own paintings, but it's so much
Well, that
easier.
was a good catch
Like,
there.
it's so much easier when it's not your own. It's so funny because you have that distance. That's why leaving it sometimes for a couple days or a week and then you go back, you really see what you were blinded to when you're too close to it and everything. So
I really liked your plein air that you
oh,
did this
thank
past
you.
weekend because I liked the pink background and then I liked the value study that was on top.
Yes. That
Uh,
I spend a lot of time doing that. I start with the sketch on paper. I use my viewfinder because every time I'm painting previously, I would think I could fit the whole scene on my canvas. It's like,
Right.
oh my God, I love this. And then when you start putting it on the canvas, it's like all the things don't fit. So now I use a viewfinder and I really am surprised at what will fit. And I keep it to that. Then I make a little tiny, just a little tiny sketch and start with values. And then I really love that pink background. And honestly, you guys, I would use it on every one of these paintings probably, but I thought you'll get sick of that. But remember that you could try that on any of these paintings. Maybe not this one because this is more of a rustic one.
Right.
But the bunny, for instance, like I would be all over putting the pink quinacridone background on this, but I didn't because I don't want to like make everyone do it. But I would say for this painting, when I paint it over, maybe I will. I would like the little bits of pink peeking through.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a little purple in that sky,
I
don't you?
do, yep. And the value study, not on a painting like this, but if I'm out plein air painting or if you're on a time crunch usually, if I do all the work of that value study, the color part is a cinch. And you gotta step away and remember, and I know I've said it bunches of times, but because I get caught up in it too, I'm like out there and I'm like, okay, that little tree that's lying on the ground, I can't get that color. What color? I'm fussing with the color too long, and it's like color doesn't matter if you have the value right. So I'd say I don't care if it's that color brown. It just needs to be this middle shade, for instance, and it works, and no one knows that that's because you can't get the color of some things in paint. So it's all
Oh.
about the values, and it really have that roadmap on there to start. You can throw whatever colors you want on there as long as you're got those lights and darks and middle shades. It
So
will
my
work.
question to you is, where do you attach your viewfinder when
I
you're
keep it in my pocket and I just I hold it up, and I only really use the viewfinder in the beginning, but after that I have a piece of red acetate viewfinder
Right.
kind of thing, but the red acetate, I keep that in my pocket and I keep looking at it because I kind of get lost sometimes of, oh, that looks really bright, but when you look at it, it's like, wait a minute, the only really bright thing is this and that. So I kind of keep checking myself with that to keep myself on, and you can
just
do
hold
that.
up your viewfinder to find your area that you're going to paint.
Right. So if it's a square that I'm doing, my viewfinder is the square, it slides. Actually, I have it right here. Let me show you. It's right here. In my
Yeah, I
phone.
bought me one.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Let me show if I can get at it in here in my stuff.
And I don't know why, but I thought you attached attach it somehow to your easel so you were looking through it all the
Oh,
time.
no, I would never be able to be that organized. And it might be hard. I like to take the whole scene in sometimes, but you can make this out of a piece of cardboard. You don't have to buy one even. But this I like because so if it's like 8 by 10 or something, I can do this. If it's a square, I can do that. And depending on how far back I am, but it just helps me contain the scene because there
Right.
could be a beautiful barn here, and then there's a stream, and then there's some trees I like. And you start to sketch, it's like, forget it. You can maybe do the barn, or you could do the tree, or just sort of frames
Okay.
a little spot for me. And then the other thing, and then I will do my little sketches, on just a little pad like this, just like that was when I did the fair one.
Yeah.
And this is, again, a piece of red acetate of any sort. You don't need a fancy thing, but this does have like a little bit of a viewfinder thing and a grayscale. But
Well, I
this,
don't think you can find that anymore. I think I looked for that.
yeah, remember I sent you a link. If you Gorilla Painter has it. It's www.gorillapainter.com. And if you search Tom Lynch, that's how I ended up finding it. But Gorilla Painter sells pochette boxes and easels and things. But you don't need
GorillaPaint.com.
yeah, you don't even, honestly, a piece of red
Oh,
acetate of any sort will work.
yeah, I got a red folder.
Yeah, that's if you got something that's plastic, it's so
Yeah.
it's kind of telling when you put it over things. And just when you're out painting, they're really a couple of handy little things. Anyway, off on a tangent there, but anyway.
I'm sorry.
No, I had it right here. I was happy to show up. But just even when we're doing little paintings like this, I've already done the value study and try to make a nice value pattern or a design. But if you're starting from scratch, it's something to keep in mind that darks and lights and midtones, if you were to have it all the same, you might not know why the painting's not working. But if you get some real deep darks in there, it's just so nice to throw a highlight on a dark or mid value. Just kind of pops, I think. So yeah.
I
My
really
friend
like
that
it.
loved her dog.
Oh yeah. Oh good. You've been doing all sorts of different sorts of paintings.
Oh, I've been sick as a dog for like the last week.
Really?
My granddaughter Willow decided to share her hacking